Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. Today, we're talking to Regine Webster, who's the Vice President at the Center for Disaster Philanthropy in Tennessee. We're going to talk a little bit about a new report they're just releasing, the 2019 Measuring the State of Disaster Philanthropy. It gives us a great idea of where the money's going as far as investments from philanthropists and how you can make a difference in the future. So stay tuned. Thanks for agreeing to spend a few minutes with me today. And can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know you've got a long history in this area of disaster philanthropy. So if you can just kind of tell those watching what your background is.
Absolutely. I graduated from college and quickly took all of the education that I learned and moved to Australia to work for a year as a scuba diving instructor. And absolutely loved it and got to see the Earth's beauty and came back to the United States and started working in research around healthcare and, kind of trying to find my way in my 20s. I don't think I'm alone in that kind of searching zone of life. What I realized, though, is that while living in Los Angeles, was always reading the international section of the newspaper. And so I went to Georgetown University and got a master's degree in foreign policy with a subject matter expertise in refugees and complex humanitarian emergencies. From there, I moved to the West Coast to Seattle, Washington, where I began working for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, leading their disaster relief portfolio. It's about a $15 million portfolio that focuses on really kind of large scale disasters globally. I did that for a number of years before moving again back to Los Angeles, where I spent some time working for the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. And while there, Hurricane Katrina hit, as well as the Pakistan earthquake hit. And so a colleague of mine and I were responsible for developing the strategic response on behalf of the Hilton Foundation to both of those disasters. From there, I connected with a couple of experts in the philanthropy field and began to launch the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. What we knew in 2010, and still quite frankly know to some extent today, is that philanthropists are incredibly well-meaning and incredibly well-resourced, but not always well-informed. And that is not at all said to be disrespectful of philanthropy, but rather just a recognition that the news and information that come out around a disaster event comes, and it might be in the news for a week, it might possibly be in the news for 2 weeks, and then it goes away. And we, the general public, think, oh well, it's not in the newspaper anymore, therefore it must be gone. And so what the Center for Disaster Philanthropy really set out to do was to be that 365-day-a-year resource for private philanthropy to help them think beyond the event-specific piece and think about, what we refer to as the full arc of the disaster. So soup to nuts, what precipitated the event and what does it take to get to full recovery in a particular community or area. On a personal note, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived here for the past 13 years. Absolutely love it. I have a lovely husband, 2 kids, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 fish.
Lovely. And that's probably because you love diving and love I'm a diver as well. And so, I know when you see the beauty underwater, it changes you. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, it's been around, you said, since 2010?
Yep, June 2010.
Okay. And so one of the things that I've been following on the work you guys do is your annual Measuring the State of Disaster Philanthropy. And I know it's scheduled, your update is scheduled to be November, I believe, 7th of 2019. And so are you able to share, this video won't go live until that day, but I'm just curious, what are some of the highlights you saw this year that were of interest?
Okay, so I have 5 that I want to run by you. And first, I want to make it clear. So the report is titled the 2019 Measuring the State of Disaster Philanthropy Report. The data that it pulls from are from 2017. And so any of you out in the disaster sphere know that 2017 was epic, right? Almost dystopian in nature, the number of disasters that hit, right? Just to refresh our memories, we're talking about Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Maria, the California wildfires, and then 2 back-to-back earthquakes down in central Mexico. All right, so with that as the setting of the stage, let me point out my 5 top updates for you. I do have to look down just to make sure I get my numbers right, so apologies for that. Okay, so first, drawing on 12 data sources, we documented almost 45 billion, with a B, in disaster-related giving in 2017.
Wow.
I know. Of that, we identified $504 million that was directed in funding specifically from foundations and public charities for disasters. So that includes transactions by U.S. Donors as well as non-U.S. donors. And of that 504 million, again, this I doubt will surprise anybody, but natural disasters accounted for 65% of that total disaster funding. So that was the second piece. The third piece I'd love to say is that disaster-related funding doubled from 2016 based on the year-over-year analysis that we do with our partner Candid.
Yeah.
The fourth thing I'd like to say is that based upon that data that we analyzed, corporate giving programs committed at least $275.4 million to disasters and humanitarian crises, both through cash donations as well as in kind. And then lastly, I'd like to point out to the knowledge we've gained about individual donors. We conducted a study earlier this year with the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, ourselves, the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, and Candid, our data partner. And we did a household survey. And what that did was it indicated that 31% of all U.S. households donated to disaster in 2017. And the mean gift was $80. So if we extrapolate that out, we can infer that in 2017, U.S. households gave $3 billion to disasters in that just 1 year alone. So it's pretty incredible generosity, certainly reflecting pretty incredible need.
Yeah. So when I know one of the things that are trends that you guys look at is kind of where the money goes as far as the phases. So on the relief side, the resilience, the recovery, have you seen any movement in the overall pot of giving that is showing some of that in greater investment into some of those areas, or is it still its response? That's where the money's going.
So it's still response, and that's where it's going. And in fact, this year we saw a bit of a step back in that 64% or almost 2/3 of funding actually addressed disaster relief. That said, because the dollars were so much larger, right, we also know that there were significant dollars that were given to reconstruction and recovery by their sheer amount. But if you look at percentages, it definitely was a relief heavy year.
Yeah. See, one of the things go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was just going to say, Puerto Rico was without power for months.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of just alarming knowledge in front of you, I don't begrudge anybody for giving to relief.
No. When you look at the human impact, no. It's just, I know for some of the work that I've been doing, and it's on that business side, the small business piece. Mm-hmm. So yes, there's the immediate relief that they need to get their businesses up and running. But the challenge, I think, for municipalities and for businesses after that response piece is kind of starting to wind down is there's nothing left for the recovery. Right. And so how do you help raise the flag on the issue to say, okay, just because the emergency responders have left doesn't mean this community is back on its feet, and it's going to need significant financial support too. So just curious how do you have any thoughts on that side?
Yeah, I mean, again, just because I don't begrudge anybody giving to relief, I fully agree with you. And quite frankly, recovery is part of our mission, quite literally. So we demonstrate that in our own practice. We have funds that we are able to grant out. So thinking about 2017, we had a 2017 wildfire fund. We also had a 2017 Mexico earthquake fund and a 2017 Atlantic hurricane season fund. We hold those dollars quite purposefully, quite intentionally, so that once those recovery needs have made themselves known, we then put on our grant making hat to demonstrate what effective recovery grant making looks like. Yeah. So in the case of Puerto Rico, following Hurricane Maria, and certainly not to dismiss Maria impact on Puerto Rico as well, we focused our efforts on economic development and livelihoods, on the mental and physical well-being of older adults, and then also on food security. And the food security thing was quite interesting. Puerto Rico, and even in advance of Maria, needed to import over 85% of its food basket, of its market basket. And then in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, it needed to import 100%. So our grant making efforts in that were recovery and orientation, in that they look to meet immediate needs post Maria for nutrition, but the long-term needs of helping an island such as Puerto Rico build its own market basket to prepare for future shocks.
Yeah, and I think those island communities are particularly vulnerable because of their location, just getting supplies to and from, and in particular, when you talk about food security. Yeah, I mean, they're getting their products from elsewhere. And, if you're on North America, on the continent, it's a little easier to ship goods and services and people, resources, right? But when you've got that added logistics piece through the ocean, it's that much more difficult for that, even the response relief effort.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we've also been learning, and I know moving away from Puerto Rico just a little bit to a neighboring island, the Bahamas, certainly Hurricane Dorian caused just, shocking sadness of devastation. And what we've been learning from one of our colleagues at the Center for Disaster Philanthropy is that debris removal is also is it a challenging or critical? I'll just say challenging, like it's a real challenging element of an island disaster recovery, because anything you bring on island will stay on island. So if you receive donations, necessary or not, of water bottles, all of those water bottles have to find a home at some point. So that's been something that's weighing on our mind, certainly, about the advice that we give as it relates to water, sanitation, hygiene, logistics, debris removal, et cetera.
Very much. I know even for ones in North American communities, that's issues that we've seen. In Canada, there have been issues where, you've got a lot of debris. It just ends up in your landfill, and your landfill that originally had a 20, 50-year lifespan all of a sudden is full. And so even, you think, did everything have to go in that landfill? Probably not. But had a debris management strategy been put in place prior, you'd be in a different situation. But most, people don't think about these things.
And even cars, think about the cars that are no longer workable because of Hurricane Dorian. Yeah. Where did they go?
Yeah. No, it's astronomical when you think of just what has to be done post.
Yeah.
So just curious then, kind of as we wrap up, I'm looking forward to seeing the report. And are there any things from your perspective? I mean, you've got a long-standing perspective from different angles on what you're seeing, some things that you're saying, this is positive. I'm excited that we're moving in this direction, or areas, you still think we need to do a lot of work in.
Yeah, I don't mean to play the cynic, because I'll play the cynic first and then I'll leave on positive. How about that?
Sure.
So two challenges that we continue to identify. Our first is just the volume play, right? We have something that we say often in our office is that the frequency and intensity of disasters, it's just mounting. And these disasters are more harrowing and cause more destruction, be it kind of roads, power, what have you, or home, schools, again, water, sanitation, hygiene, destruction. And so we also know that the institutions that are in place to navigate these disasters are really feeling the strain of that just intense volume of the disasters. So I think we all collectively need to be attentive to that, call it a new normal, call it what you want, but we're going to have to look at these systems and increase the capacity. The second is around low attention disasters, right? We've talked Harvey, Irma, Maria, Dorian, wildfires, Mexico earthquakes, but there are 14 million people right now that have been disaster affected up and down the Mississippi, Missouri River watersheds and their associated tributaries, right? A bomb cyclone hit, like waters, even as we're moving into, winter, the freeze season, we're seeing waters are above flood stage. And so one woman at NOAA said, you're freezing a sponge and then you're going to put more water on it and then it will melt. And so the 2019 flooding across the Midwest is going to have huge impacts. And how do you say that? Like it's going to set 2020 spring thaw up for some real trouble. So just the desire, collective desire for all of us to stay on top of what are called low attention disasters that affect millions, but they're maybe in small towns with, one stoplight, two stoplight towns that are not on the coast and they're not receiving that same media attention. So all of us staying attentive to the needs that arise in those smaller communities. Yeah. In terms of hope, the operational NGOs that are poised to do the response and recovery work are just incredible. You're taking the nuts and bolts of human and social services work and really taking it to the highest level possible, where people are trained to provide not just food and shelter, but also the emotional and spiritual care, the psychosocial support they need, getting people's triaging them to help fill out, ghastly amounts of paperwork, helping them get back into their homes in an authentic and thoughtful way. That's where I find hope is the people that are doing this day in, day out.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I thank you for the work you're doing on an ongoing basis to help kind of make sense of disaster philanthropy, helping people understand where they can make the biggest impact and where the needs are on an ongoing basis. Because like you said, the media maybe today is showing the California wildfires, but I'm pretty sure that the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Florida, there's a lot of places that still haven't recovered from the last hit they took and are struggling to find money to do what they need to do. So thank you. I'll put a link to your website and the report in the description of the video so people can download it. And hopefully you'll get more support and more interest in what you do.
That's
so
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liam.
For taking the time to talk today. And I'm excited to see the report. So.
Great. Thanks so much, Liam. It's been nice talking to you.